again, thank you for joining us for our youth mental health panel. We had great sessions this morning talking about kicking off the day, talking about suicide prevention. And we are super excited to have a great group with us this afternoon to close out our day during Children's Week on Youth Mental Health. So I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. And I'm going to start with Allison Stevens, who is the main coordinator for that panel. If you want to take it away.
Sure, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and our moderator is going to be Riley, who is on. So give me just a second. Here we go. Riley?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm having some issues. Okay, here we go. So hi, our first panelist today is Trin Dang. She's the executive director of NAMI Southern Nevada. Her journey with NAMI began in 2012 as a participant of the Family to Family 12-week education class. With a class that has changed her life, she has given back to dozens of families by teaching the Family to Family class to others. As someone with lived experience with mental health challenges and seeing it firsthand with family members, she is a passionate mental health advocate. She continues to bring mental health awareness to the community through mental health first aid training, presentations, and collaborating with organizations to deliver mental health training with empathy, compassion, and understanding. Our next panelist is Lexi Beck. Lexi is a youth facilitator at Youth Move Nevada. She enjoys supporting and empowering her peers by using her own lived experience with mental health. Then there is Allison Stevens. She is the statewide family network director at Nevada PEP. She's a parent of children with mental health needs and uses her lived experience to advocate for improvements to the children's mental health care system. And finally, I am Riley Harris. I'm a youth mentor for Youth Move Nevada down in Las Vegas. I also have personal lived experience with mental health needs, and I also seek to use my experiences to help my peers. So right now, are we?
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
I didn't know if we were taking questions first or if that's at the end. Okay. So with that, here's the first question to our panel. What motivates you to be engaged with youth mental health?
So I guess I can start this one off. So as Riley was saying in the introductions, I obviously have lived experience with mental health, and this is what originally motivated me to be engaged with youth mental health. And of course, that's always motivating me, but today I'm really motivated by the progress we make daily and will continue to make in bridging the gap between needs and services, and of course, improving access to mental health resources. So that's really what motivates me to be engaged.
I'll go next. And so for me, I think I'm coming from a parent perspective. I have two children who, have mental health needs, as many youth do. And it's so important to me that youth have the right kinds of access, and that access isn't limited to certain definitions. The idea that we have a single provider on a particular side of town who may not really relate, culturally, linguistically to my family, my children, really doesn't give us access to mental health services. And so it's really important to me that I share that perspective of what a family, a parent actually really needs, so that decision makers have that understanding of what it's really like.
For me, a bit about my background. I was also previously a school teacher, so I taught kindergarten, second grade, middle school, high school. And when I work with adults right now, and just through my own experience, I see a lot of things that I guess I could talk about my personal experience with having mental health challenges as a teen. I wish I would have learned the things that I've learned in my adult life, in my 20s and 30s. I wish I would have went back and learned this as a teen, because a lot of things might have been or could have been prevented. And I think prevention starts with youth, because that's oftentimes where we see a lot of mental health conditions or symptoms start. So we can engage a youth from a young age. We can really help them with managing and having coping skills and being able to manage their mental health throughout their lifetime. So that's what motivates me.
Okay, and the next question for the panel is, excuse me, what are your top priorities for the children's mental health system in Nevada?
Allison, are you hopping on, or you want me to? I'm having issues hearing.
That's okay. So I'll go.
I can't hear her either. That's okay. Yeah, I wasn't hearing anything either, but I can hear you now, Allison.
Okay. So I think the priorities that I have two, I think, top priorities for children's mental health, and that's services and access. I think, we've seen a lot of things in the news and all around. We see all these escalated issues with youth who are, sent out of state, or they're in residential facilities. And I think a lot of that could be resolved if we had a really broad array of services and supports. And so I think oftentimes, especially with parents, that's the only thing that they know. It's okay, well, let's go to the hospital, because there just aren't those other services, and people don't know what they don't know. And so if we could just, have some of those things in place where children and youth could get the services that they need, and things oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes may not escalate to other levels. So I think that's really critically important. And that services for everyone. Nevada is a very diverse state, and so it's really important to make sure that the services that we have actually reflect the people, the regions, the locations, as I said, the language. All of those pieces have to come together to be able to have the services that people need. And then access. And I think access is also really a broad topic. That comes down to things like transportation. It can also come down to money. Who is paying for these services, and how are they being paid? How do people have access? Is it enough for providers to want to provide those services within the state? And so I think there's a lot of different levels, but those are the two top priorities that I have. Services and access.
I can definitely echo that. I know one of my top priorities is also access. And really my priority stemmed from a want to erase the stigma associated with mental health. And in erasing that stigma, I also want to see access improved. We see a lot of stigma associated with something as simple as seeking support, asking for help. So while we improve access to mental health care services, I also have a priority of removing that stigma. Additionally, my priority is to see parity increase for youth with mental health, specifically in insurance and mental health coverage, with the focus being on providing youth access to timely and quality mental health care services. We see this happening when a youth has a physical health concern. If they break an arm, they're able to go to the hospital and see doctors there and get the appropriate care and access. And I just want to see that same support happen with children's mental health.
I would wholeheartedly agree with what Allison and Lexi has just shared. And on top of that, I'd also like to add, along with decreasing the stigmas, the education piece. How can we educate children? And I think it really starts with that social emotional learning component. And that can be done within our education systems. I've taught in California where they were starting to implement social emotional learning standards within our curriculum to start teaching kids from a young age how to identify their emotions. Because before they can get into coping and learning about resiliency, they have to be able to identify the emotions that they're feeling. And in that in a sense erases that stigma, because we all have emotions, we all have feelings. And if we learn from a young age how to identify it, how to cope, how to deal with the challenges, that's definitely a way that we can start with the prevention. So when hardships and things come up in life, that as adults, they would know how to identify and be able to cope with other challenges that come up for them. So that's one. And then another one, just to re-emphasize the access to care. Access not just within our clinics, our hospitals, access with community resources. So more funding and support for nonprofits that are able to support the additional services for youth, to have more programs so that, you know, while they're going into the therapy sessions, they're also getting ongoing support outside of that, whether it looks like an after school program or whether it's other programs that are connecting them to other youth, whether it's educational programs within our schools so that they can continue to build on academically, but that social emotional learning component is so important, I believe.
All right. So how do you see diversity and inclusion, or lack thereof, impacting youth mental health?
I can go ahead and start with this one. There definitely is a lack of diversity within our communities because, as Allison was saying earlier, when not just children, but adults as well, when we're going out to seek services and therapy and all that, they need to see people who look like them, who may have similar life experiences, who have that knowledge and wisdom or that cultural competency to be able to address some of the mental health needs. Because in order for, you know, that connection to happen, the healing to begin, to feel safe, having someone who really can sit across from them that says, yes, I get it, or, you know, I've been there, or I've come from similar challenges, or to be able to just see someone that they feel comfortable with. I think that's so important, and we definitely need more of that within our community.
Yeah, I will also add, going off of what Trin said, you know, diversity and inclusion are major factors in mental health. And because of that, we need to see much more of it. You know, I just think of the fact that culture is so broad, so mental health needs to be just as broad. And, you know, I've seen lack of diversity in youth, or in youth accessing services, specifically with what Trin was saying, in that lack of representation. Representation really is important, and it matters when youth are seeking services. You know, a youth of color may not be as comfortable talking to a white psychologist. It's just we all have our own mental health needs, and it's important that we can relate to others that understand what we're experiencing. And with that, you know, with representation being so important, so is inclusivity. No youth is excluded from mental health, just like no adult is excluded from mental health. So much like we aren't, you know, excluded from experiencing mental health, we shouldn't be kept from receiving services based on age, gender, race, sexual orientation, and things like that. So, you know, I think it would be extremely beneficial for youth mental health to see more diversity and to have more inclusive spaces in talking and dealing with mental health.
You know, children and youth are impacted with their mental health in so many spaces. So if you think of anyone who's touching a child or youth, can have an impact on their mental health. And so to me, diversity and inclusion are critical, and that cultural and linguistic competency, that those are critical skills for everyone to have. So we talk about that representation, and you know, Trin was talking about the school environment, right? Who are those teachers that are interacting? You know, how do you identify, you know, things that may be a behavior in one child, but, you know, it's seen as, you know, normal, typical, boys will be boys, or, you know, those kinds of things. So the diversity and inclusion piece has to sort of be ubiquitous throughout the community, because the community in Nevada is diverse. And I think there's just so many studies, like study after study, that shows that it's not just about the youth feeling comfortable. The care is different, because having that ability to relate understand the perspective, to be able to know what the child or the youth, the whole family is actually experiencing, creates a different level of understanding and therefore a different level of care. So to me, diversity and inclusion are really, really critical. And I think, Lexi, you're spot on. That's really, really broad. There are so many different components to diversity and to culture. And so we are always so proud in Nevada of being such a diverse state. And it's one of those things that we talk about a lot, but we have to start reflecting it in our services so that we can support the diversity that we all care so much about.
So what is the one thing you want people to take away from this panel?
A lot. I mean, we say it over and over again, mental health affects us all, but it really starts with us. We need to make our mental health a priority so we can lead by example and help show the greater benefits of seeking help and receiving mental health services and supports. I also want people to know that it's not easy talking about mental health, and it can be an uncomfortable conversations, but it takes conversations like these to see progress and growth. So we just need to keep doing what we're doing right now, and that's talking about it and engaging others in the community. And yeah.
I wanted to add to that, and I'm sure a lot of people on here have heard, and if you haven't yet, according to Mental Health America study, that we are 51 out of 51 in the nation when it comes to youth mental health. I thought that there were only 50 states. How do we get on 51? Apparently after the District of Columbia, because of our lack of access to care and the increased need. However, we don't have to stay there. We don't have to stay at the bottom, and we can make it back up to the top. And that takes focused effort into creating policies that will support youth mental health, to put funding towards our youth and our children, our future, because these are the very kids that are going to grow up in our community, our society, our nation, that's going to be the next generation of leaders. And so it really does start with youth mental health, children's mental health, to really take a look at that and see how we can support them. So rather than being a reactive nation or community to mental health needs, that we are proactive and we work towards prevention, which we know can, have such a significant impact on a person's life and overall the whole community, versus being reactive and seeing the devastation that it takes a toll on families and communities overall when we don't have those preventative efforts.
Yeah, for me, I just want to say I love that Trin brought up that concept of resiliency. And certainly we do need to have the screening and prevention, but in addition to that, at the end of the day, that resiliency piece is what's so important. And I think it's really critical for everyone, adults and youth, to understand that having a mental health need is not the end, right? It does not define who you are. It is something that you may have to deal with, something that you may have to learn to cope with, but there are skills that you can learn to be able to help you to be more resilient. And especially in this past year with the pandemic, that has become even more and more important for families of children with mental health needs. That ability to just keep going, to be resilient, to take all of these things in stride, to be able to go one more day, to identify those resources yet again, try something new. And so that's something that's really important. It's not a magic bullet. There's no one stop. It's that you have to just help people to have access to resources so that they can practice that resilience and build those resiliency skills to be able to keep going. It is great to think that, we can get someone treatment and then it's over. But that's typically not the case. I mean, typically mental health needs are something that are ongoing. And so having those resources available, having the services in our community, and giving people the opportunity to practice that resilience is really important.
All right, so now we're going to have a Q&A section for anyone who wants to ask questions questions to the panelists. I don't know if people should take themselves off mute or just type into the text box, but either way, we'll be doing that now.
And if it's easier too, Riley, this is Amanda, we could always, if you stop sharing the screen, people can raise their hand too, and you can see you can probably see most of the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever is easiest. I'm not seeing anyone, and I'm gonna take that as a sign that the panelists. Oh wait, here we go. One person, Leanne McAllister.
I was hoping that you could talk a little bit about how you went about finding resources for yourself and a therapist for yourself, or how you talk to others about finding a therapist. I know we hear from families that they'll hear about a great therapist, but it's not in their insurance network, or they hear about great therapists, but the waiting list is, very, very long. So do you have any pointers on how families and find therapists, either family therapists or individuals for a teen or tween?
Well, I mean, I have a lot of lived experience in trying to access services. And what made me so passionate and motivated with mental health is what I was talking about, the stigma. Growing up, mental health was very stigmatized in my household. So while there were services available to us through the school system, through, the insurance, I personally had to wait to find mental health services once I went to college. And at that point, I was able to get in touch with the student health center, and I honestly just made an appointment, just like a checkup appointment, and started talking about my mental health. And that's how I got connected to services. And I know a lot of my peers were connected to services through the college campus. So that's just been my experience. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add.
Yeah, so usually, and thank you so much for that question, Leanne. I know it's a tough one. That's why we're advocating for increased services, because we know that there is a need. And I have heard that, at times that there were wait lists, which is really unfortunate. Something that I recommend for families is to join our family support group. From there, you're able to meet other family members who are in similar situations, and through word of mouth, you're able to hear, what the experience has been, if they're able to take patients right away or clients, and take families, and it's just word of mouth, or psychologytoday.com is usually when people call into our helpline that we refer out to. But that's been the best way that I've known so far. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Okay, let's keep going. I don't have anything to add.
Okay, so I think there's a couple people with their hands raised, and up next is Kyler.
Hi, so I'm Kyler's mom, Cherise. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but we're in Kyler's. So my son was diagnosed over issues in 6th grade, and he really struggled with, and we had to probably find any resources for him. Every time we went to find a therapist, we couldn't, they weren't available, or the list was too long. So Kyler, at 13 years old, founded Kyler's Kicks. A few months ago, he actually got a humongous 5,000 square foot building. We do free art therapy, music therapy, entrepreneurship courses. We even have etiquette courses here. They start teen businesses. We have therapists here, and it's all run by the teens. Like, I'm in his building right now. I don't know if you guys can see behind me, but I'm in the entrepreneurship room right now. and that's their bookshelves there. They have 2 art studios down the hallway, a music therapy studio, and the best thing about Kyler's Kicks is it's all run by the teens, and they believe that every single teen in 6th to 12th grade should get mental health help. So we don't require any insurance. We don't require any social security numbers. We don't require anything except the teen themselves to come here and to do amazing things. So I just wanted to throw that out there for you guys.
All right, that sounds like a very helpful resource. So up next is Amaris.
Hi, sorry, just trying to find the unmute button. Thanks, Riley. You guys have all talked about some very difficult times, and I know, as youth, one source of strength is really your close friends and social support network. And a lot of times, you only get to see those people at school or with school-related activities. And with the pandemic over the last year, where, some of us have been able to be in school physically in different parts of the state and other people are just not, and it's all virtual. Have you seen or noticed or can recommend ways in which youth are now like supporting themselves and their friends in a different kind of capacity, or not? Like, how is that going, and what can community organizations do to help fill in the gaps of being able to see physically and be with your supports?
That's a great question, an important question too. At the start of this pandemic, we had to figure it out too. I mean, it was new for everyone, and we transferred, and when I say we, I'm talking about Youth Move Nevada. We transferred to an online platform, and really I found that a lot of youth were transferring over to online platforms, whether it be more social media, whether it be finding support groups online, or just, utilizing cell phones more for communication and face-to-face contact, not face-to-face, but over the phone. Yeah, I know that we've just increased our access online. We try to support youth through digital resources, definitely, more this year than the past year. And that seems to be working. So it's just reaching youth where they're at and really promoting environments that they want to get involved in. And I just keep thinking of Youth Move and what we're doing and engaging youth through virtual platforms like Zoom. And that's just proved to be very beneficial.
Lexi, I just want to jump in. The other thing that I've heard coming from youth is video games as well. Because I think, like, for me, growing up, video games were kind of a lone kind of static thing, or it might be like my brother or my sister, right? But now it's very interactive. You can play, the same way you would be playing, comparably like a sport or a game or something in person. They're able to do that virtually through video game platforms using the connective technology. So that's another thing that I've heard quite a bit. And Riley, I think there's a couple of questions in the chat box.
There is. I just didn't know if Trin had anything else to add.
No, I would just echo what Allison was saying. I think in terms of youth connecting to each other, it's that the online platforms where you could play things like Monopoly online. So you're kind of simulating games that you would play in person, like board games and things like that, but through an online platform because of everything that's happening with the pandemic, or just having Netflix streaming parties, or ways where you could do things that you would normally do in person, but able to connect online via those platforms.
All right, so Anna asked in the chat, are there any free apps that can help with mental health?
There are quite a few. I know that Youth Move Nevada had put together a resource probably the middle of last year talking about some of the apps. There were quite a few for several different things. I know Mindspace is one. I want to say Animoto is one, but that could be something else. There are a ton of apps, and you can easily find them just by looking in the App Store, typing things like self-care, mental health. That's what I do. Awesome. Omaris just put a link in the chat. That's awesome. But yeah, I personally use apps for my mental health, even if it's just to take breathing breaks, and it really does help.
I'll jump in. With Nevada PEP, we have e-newsletters, and we do an app review in those newsletters. So I'd encourage, I'll drop the link to our website in the chat box, but there's, always something different, always something new, and we kind of go in and take a look at it and give a short review for families to be able to take a look at it. So those are some links that people might find of interest as well.
Same. Sometimes on our newsletters, we'll have a resource of the month at the end, and we have a couple of apps. I was actually going through it to try to find some of them. Personally, I use Insight Timer for mindfulness to help with the anxiety and things like that. But I was going to post a couple of links of apps that that we posted on our newsletter before. One's called COVID Coach to help. It's a self-care tool. There's another one for PTSD that's supported by the VA and so on. But I'll add a couple of those links as well.
All right, so the next question is from Karen. What would you like legislators to know while they're considering mental health bills and budgets?
Okay, so I'll jump in on that one. I think for me, I'd like for legislators to understand that investing in children's and youth mental health is not extra, right? It's not above and beyond. It's not that, what Trent said, we're 51st in the nation. So it is an emergency and much the same as many other things that are being considered by the legislature. So it's not something that anyone's asking for in addition to. And frankly, when we're able to have more community-based services, more resources, more access in general, you're also ending up reducing some of those costs in the long run, right? You're not going to have all the hospital visits. You're not sending children and youth out of state. You're also just able to have a healthier, happier, more productive community, right? Families where, things are just moving in a better direction because people have access to the services and supports that they need. So for me, it would be to, really understand that this is bare minimum stuff that we should have in place. So when folks are advocating and asking for services and supports, these are things that are critical and they're a necessity, and they will make Nevada a better place to live and a better place to raise a family.
I will also say as a teacher previously, when children are struggling with their mental health, with not being able to cope with the challenges in their lives, it's really difficult for them to think about anything else and learn. That social emotional learning piece, or that being able to address their mental health needs is so important, and it just leads to all the other areas of their lives to be able to function and to be able to live fulfilling lives. And it just doesn't only affect that one child, it affects the whole entire family, whether it's both parents, siblings, extended family. It's such a ripple effect throughout the families and then throughout the whole community when we don't address these needs. And so I would agree that, it's not in addition to, it's definitely something that we need to make a priority, especially because of the crises that has come out of our state. We really need to bring it to the forefront and address those needs through education, through services, through increasing the diversity within our mental health field. It needs to be addressed in all areas, not just within education, not just within nonprofits, not just within, developing our workforce. It needs to be a whole well-rounded solution, and it needs to be addressed in all areas for it to become better.
Absolutely. I think Allison and Trin brought up great points. And obviously I agree with everything that was said. When I think about this question as a young adult, as someone that was a youth with a lot of mental health experience, I want legislators to know that although I'm a youth, my story is valid, my experience is valid, and the decisions that they're making right now is going to impact my future. So that's really all I would add. I think, Allison's absolutely right. This isn't, something that is like over the top, like crazy idea. It's children's mental health, and we want to improve access and services. So yeah, I would just say that, youth mental health is valid and important, and yeah.
All right, I'm not currently seeing any other questions.
Hey, Riley, do you mind if I jump in? There was just a comment that I thought was really good. It says we need to address the lack of special needs teachers and therapists for our students with disabilities, more training and pay in the school system. And I just want to say I couldn't agree more with that. Students with disabilities often will need, various supports, right? And we need to be able to offer that and be in compliance with, federal law and, frankly, what is right. Students with disabilities should have access. And so I think it's really, really important for us to focus in on that. And that's one of those things where, as a legislature and state agencies and so forth, that's not asking for something that's additional or special. That is asking for what we should have and what should be available for all students, but particularly students with disabilities.
Okay, I actually think there's a question in the chat now. Okay, so the question is, how can we ensure students' safety when meeting with professionals?
I think this is a really great question talking about school. And I think that the idea is that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. I can tell you as a parent, frankly, I'm not so sure that I would be comfortable with with the social workers at my child's particular school, knowing the ins and outs of our personal business. But that might be very convenient and accessible for another child and their family, right? So I think it's about understanding what people's preferences are and having enough resources available so that everyone doesn't have to funnel through the same system. I definitely have heard of youth who are saying, well, wait a minute. So if I go and access this resource, that means that when I go in the cafeteria and I bump into this person, they know all about everything that's going on. That can be uncomfortable for some youth. Again, on the flip side, it also can be very, very accessible for youth to be able to access those kinds of services in the school environment, and can really reduce the the need for parents to try to figure out transportation, those kinds of things. So the idea would be that that's why I was saying a broad array of services. It can't just be a one size fits all and this is all we do. We've got to make sure that our services and supports are as diverse as the needs that families have.
To add to that, I think I'd like to address the stigma part too, with the student not wanting to see a social worker, there's stigma associated with it. I think that's where the widespread education comes in, to break down the stigma, to start those conversations and letting people know that it's okay to address our mental health needs. It's okay to talk about mental health, because we all have feelings, emotions that affects our mental health. And, just having more education. And I'm not saying by the teachers, because I know teachers have a lot on their plate already. I'm saying through other organizations like, what we do as nonprofits out here, where we go and help. It's the in-between that happens between the therapist's office and the school. What else do we have for the kids? It's getting in there and providing that space for them to either have those conversations with peers or to be educated through psychoeducation, presentations, to let them know that it's okay to talk to others, and how to approach someone when sharing how to appropriately express their emotions and feelings, and that sort of thing, where it could possibly be addressed as an hour presentation about warning signs and who to reach out to. that's where I could see us addressing that question.
Yeah, and I think options are really important. I really like what Allison was talking about with the individualized need. So when I read this question, I see it says, they refuse to meet with the social workers due to previous experiences. Well, are there other social workers? Are there other environments? Are there peer groups? Are there paper resources or a different teacher that could talk to the students? So just having those different options for the youth, because every youth is going to have a different preference. My peer may not want to go talk one-on-one with a counselor, but I may enjoy that style. So to me, it's just important to have options and to really talk to the youth and find out from the youth what would make them comfortable and what they would prefer.
So I just want to highlight a comment. It's from the same person talking about special education teachers. They said, I would be interested in coordinating with the Governor's Council for Disabilities to ensure enough special education teachers are available in our rural and urban areas. Trained occupational and speech therapists are critical.
Everyone's head's just nodding.
I mean, it's a good comment. I'm not seeing any other questions presently.
Yeah, I want to share one last thing before we end. I know we've got just a few minutes left, and I think we're through questions. But on the Children's Week YouTube page, there's some videos that are highlighting experiences of youth and parents. So just really quickly want to share maybe a couple of those. They're not very long, but maybe can give everyone an idea of what families are experiencing.
Hi, my name is April, and I am the mom of 5 children, one of which struggles with anxiety and depression. And we actually had a pretty good experience with accessing services in Nevada prior to getting insurance. So we had many services available when we didn't have insurance. It was when we obtained insurance that we started struggling. We had to change providers for my child, and she had great providers before. We also had struggles finding the providers.
Okay. I don't know what I did here.
It went to the point where my sister wasn't the type to request any type of help. She was mostly like, I'll hold everything in. And it was to the point where she wasn't able to hold everything in. And these words really hurt me when she was like, I need professional help. And that's something she would never say. And when she said that, I was like, okay, I'm going to do whatever it takes. You know, if I have to cooperate with this, like, I'll do it. When I went into looking in the internet for different psychologists and different type of therapists that would help out, even with the insurance or even without, the quota would be like $200 every session, $400, $300. And it's something that we know therapy takes time, and it's something consistent. It's kind of like the gym, you know, you have to work out consistently to see results, and you can't go to therapy once a month and think that you'll be fine. It's something consecutive. And if it's $200, $300 every session, that takes a big toll on someone, and it delays the results a lot, you know?
I'm a youth in Nevada, and I have always had mental health needs, and my mom has been the one to help find support and services. I am currently seeing a therapist that my mom helped me find, and is someone that I can trust. This kind of support has helped me learn about my own mental health, my emotions, and how to deal with them. I hope that mental health resources are more available for kids like me who need support.
And this is the last one I'll share.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to share my heart. As I reflect on my experiences, I wonder if professionals fully understand the impact behavioral treatment services have on the entire family. Is it understood that as parents come to the realization that their child is in need of additional support from individuals outside the family, there's a feeling of hopelessness, failure, and dismay? Do individuals working within the Nevada system of care realize that in addition to the parent seeking avenues of assistance, the parent is also dealing with the grief involved with losing the dream of a normal family, while also trying to finance the additional expenses of services? Once services are located, is it understood that the waiting process to access services is excruciating to the family? The mental health issues do not sit tight and wait to be addressed. The issues continue to escalate and possibly multiply as days turn into weeks and months. For example, our family has waited a full year to receive services that was requested by a mental health professional working with our family. In addition, parents share their struggles with perfect strangers, which often reopens the hurt and pain. Respect of family structure, values, times, resources, and feelings are crucial. My family has experienced lack of respect. Not only is this unacceptable, but tragically has led to additional stress. My hope is that no other family will endure this hardship while accessing children's mental health services. It is my desire that policymakers, providers, decision makers, and legislators will hear my heart and take steps to make children's mental health services more accessible while meeting each family's individual needs. Thank you.
You're really low right now. Can you say that again, Allison?
I said that was all. And then there was some music behind me.
Okay. Thank you all so much for joining us today. That was a fantastic job from all the panelists, really highlighting youth mental health, and you know, special thanks to Nevada Pet for helping to gather those videos that we'll be able to use all throughout the session in order to let policymakers know the experiences of families, and then not only at the state legislators, but for those policymakers in the communities as well that also are making decisions that will impact accessing appropriate services, community-based services for youth. So we hope that you guys stay involved, even though we have 1 week for Children's Week. We know we should be advocating for kids every day at the legislature to keep them on the top of our minds. And we will be doing another day specifically on mental health on National Children's Mental Health Day, which is Tuesday, sorry, I should have had that date up or Thursday, sorry, May 6th, we believe. We're still waiting for the national date to come out, but it's usually the first Thursday. So we're pretty positive that that's when it will be. And thank you all for joining us all throughout the day. We'll leave the room open for a little bit if anybody wants to chat or have any questions. And then tomorrow we will be back to talk about children's physical health.
Hey, Amanda?
Yes?
It's Jane Saint, and I have a question for everybody on this call right now. Sunday, as many of you know, Oprah interviewed Prince Harry and his wife, Meghan, and mental health was a major topic of that conversation. And I'm just wondering what the thought is of the group with both Harry and Meghan coming forward about their mental health issues. What kind of impact do you think that's going to have on people's, I don't want to say perception or support or understanding, but what's that going to do for mental health? You know, because here we've got major celebrity people who are coming forward and saying, you know, it's an issue, and they're breaking that stigma down. So I'm just kind of wondering what the group thinks about that.
So I think the more we talk about mental health, the better it is. We do have that stigma that exists. And so the fact that that can spark discussion in people's homes or among friends. I certainly got a text message late at night on Sunday. Are you watching this? And, here's what's going on. And so, as Trent had said before, we want mental health to be a part of the conversation. And I know Lexi and Riley had also talked a lot about stigma. But part of reducing that stigma, I think, is being open about the fact that mental health needs exist, first off, because I think there's people who still don't understand that. I have no idea what's happening to my computer. But also just in general to spark those conversations and make it a part of the national dialogue, I think is really important. And because of that, it's actually international dialogue right now.
17 million people watched that program in the United States and 12 million in the UK. And it's caused quite a stir.
I just want to say, I think we see this often when celebrities come out with their mental health stories. For some reason, this made me think of Demi Lovato. Is it Demi Lovato? Oh, no. Yes, Demi Lovato. Okay. In her mental health struggles. And, it really helps when people that are often seen in the public's eye, if they can talk more about mental health, it really helps to eliminate that stigma. And I think that was just a perfect example with that interview Sunday night. Yeah, we just need more of it.
I'm glad to hear that, because, it really, it's sparking a renewed interest. I hope it's sparking a renewed interest.
Was there anything else? And we've got to kind of wrap it up, Amanda.
No, like I said, we'll keep the room open for a little bit more. That way, if people want to chat or have conversations, it's available. But we can officially close the panel since it seems everybody got their questions answered. And again, just very thankful that everybody's able to join us today. And thank you to all the panelists for taking your time to talk about this important issue during Children's Week.
Thank you for having me and us.
Thank you.